All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Those of you that are in here in person, bring the rain. Those of you that are online, thank you for technical difficulties. It should be one of those days, I guess. I'm glad it's Friday. My name is Nathaniel. I'm a psychologist at Outreach Coordinator at the University County Center. And this is our Solving Conflicts and Improving Relationships Group Care Workshop. So thank you all for being here. You're going to get the next slide, please. Today we're gonna spend kind of our time in three parts really. We're gonna talk about healthy relationships first and how we can recognize what healthy relationships are. And basically also how we can recognize what unhealthy relationships are, right? And then or sometimes when you hear about healthy relationships, the only ability you have is to try to find a way to get yourself out of that relationship, right? But a lot of times we are able to try to improve the health of those relationships instead, right? They're not fully abusive conversations and find ways to improve them. And so that's the second thing we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about assertive communication and how you best can try and improve relationships through conversation. And then the last section today is going to be focused most specifically on when you win a fight with somebody, not a physical fight. I have no ability to train you on that. I'm talking about some kind of verbal altercation with somebody. How can we manage conflict, mediate conflict in the best way to get the best outcomes for everybody involved? So those are going to be kind of the three things we're hitting on today. Spend the next hour and a half together, and then we'll all be on our way back out into hopefully a good weekend. The next slide will be no chance, please. So I'm going to start off with today. I've been talking about thinking about this a lot recently. There's this idea oftentimes that being in relationships, especially when we're talking about romantic relationships, intimate partner relationships, right? A lot of people feel bad sometimes when they want to have one of those relationships, right? There's some pressure, you may always hear things like, oh, you need to be okay with yourself before you can be in a relationship, things like that. And in some extent that's true, right? You do need to know who you are and to know who you are in a relationship as well, right? But somehow this whole good advice that we get, make sure that you have your own stuff together before you try and start a relationship. Somehow that advice sometimes gets twisted, and we start to think it's not good to want to be in a relationship, right? And that's something that I'm just really annoyed a lot of the time, right? Because it is a good thing. It's a good thing to want to be in a relationship, whether we're talking about romantic relationship, whether we're talking about social relationship, whether we're talking about family relationship. Literally, we've got some scripture quotes up here. Genesis, we're starting right off with basically, it's not good for humans to be alone, right? If you want to take some interpretations of the whole Adam and Eve story, that's kind of what it's all about, right? And so I want to validate that if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling a desire to connect with other people, that's not a weakness, right? That's actually a really good thing. It's a really good, healthy impulse. And if we can find a way to do that in a healthy way, right, then that's actually going to be really good for you and hopefully for whoever you're in a relationship with, obviously, right? And so we have to think about how then we go about being in a healthy relationship, what the behaviors of a healthy relationship look like. And so those behaviors, if you just hit up Colossians real quick, this is probably a verse that everybody's heard a million times, right? But clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience, bear all these things, clothe yourself in love, right? This is one of the really common ones. But these are some of the biblical things that we think about when we think about healthy relationships. It can be a really good way to get us started on the idea of what a healthy relationship looks like, especially a healthy relationship now in 2024. But I'd like to hear from you as well. So if you could give me the next slide, please. Next one, skip over this one. I want us to get into groups real quick, but I really want to know what makes a relationship healthy, right? Maybe think of some of the most healthy relationships you know about. Maybe you've had a really good model from parents or maybe from mentors or maybe some friends or whatever. Maybe you've seen really good healthy relationship models before. What makes those things healthy? What makes them different from other relationships that maybe are not so healthy, right? So next slide, please. So this is going to be my first handout for you guys. I gave you, this is basically the answer. So some of you might have cheated, that's fine. You'll see if you could send the relationship spectrum handout to everybody online. This is from Love is Respect. This is a great website for more stuff on healthy relationships if you're interested. The biggest thing with relationships is that they are all on a spectrum, right? You're never going to just have a super healthy relationship or a super unhealthy relationship, right? I guess you could occasionally, right? But for the most part, everything's going to be somewhere in between. And it's oftentimes somewhere in between on a number of these different areas, right? Maybe you and your friend are doing good in one area, but not in another. Same thing, maybe you and your partner are doing really good in one area, but not in another, right? And so if we can figure out where we're feeling and how we're feeling in a lot of these different spaces, then you're going to be able to really tell what's healthy and what's not so healthy, right? So the very first one on here is respect, right? Which you guys already know. That's awesome. Respect is valuing each other for who they are, right? Respecting them as a person, right? And the toxic side of that, right, is mistreating, harmful relationship, right? Where you are actively trying to mistreat or take advantage of the person that you're in relationship with, right? And that happens, right? And those are really toxic relationships. But typically before we get there, right, there's a slide from respectfulness into disrespectfulness, not respecting other people's time, not respecting other people's opinions, not respecting, other people's right to do X, Y, or Z kind of thing, right? And so that's that slide that you start to see between a healthy to unhealthy and eventually landing in abusive, right? Same thing with communication, which we also know. A communicative relationship is actively talking about what's going wrong, actively talking about what's going right, actively talking about all of it, right? And that's going to be really a healthy way to continue to build connection, continue to build intimacy, right? An abusive relationship is also very communicative, but communicative in a harmful way, aggressive, verbally abusive, right? That's the kind of an abusive relationship that we want to avoid, right? But the slide into that starts when we stop talking, right? That's the middle piece, is that when we stop communicating with each other, when we stop feeling we're able to approach each other, right? And that's going to be like the sign, the warning sign, as it were, that your relationship is getting less and less healthy, right? And we oftentimes don't communicate because we think we're trying to be healthy, right? Because we think we're trying to avoid conflict, maybe. But in the end, that's always going to fail, right? We need to find the bravery and the courage to communicate so that we can establish a trusting, healthy relationship. Or if our partner doesn't agree to communicate with us or communicates not, right? So we can identify the relationship for what it is and potentially terminate that relationship, right? Continuing down the way, right? Same thing with trust. Trusting, not trusting, actively accusing, right? The thing that I see in trust all the time is like manipulative, jealousy type things, right? Especially if we're talking about romantic relationships, right? Well, like, I trust you. It's just like I don't trust other guys, right? So you can't talk to any guys because they're bad, right? Now I'm controlling who you connect with, who you talk with, right? That's really untrusting, right? And that easily leads into accusations, right? And like we might think at first, like, oh, this is like maybe normal, right? Maybe this is just kind of a typical pattern. It's not a healthy relationship to find yourself in, right? Anytime somebody's restricting your ability to spend time with who you want to spend time with for no appreciable reason, right? That's going to be an untrusting relationship, right? That's also why we have on this. I can only fit X number of things on the actual slide here, but as you see on the handout, spending time with others versus isolating, right? If you're spending time with other people in addition to the person that you're in a relationship with, that's a healthy thing to be doing, right? Don't just spend all your time with one person. This happens a lot when relationships are new though, right? That's sort of a normative thing, right? We get really excited about maybe being in a new relationship and we spend all our time with that person, right? Or maybe we are really stressed out. We only want to spend time with one person, the one person that like we feel like we can trust or count on or whatever, right? But if you start doing that, the more you start doing that, you're going to lose the other social supports around you, right? And you're going to lose those other friends, connections, all those kinds of things. And that can rapidly turn not only into an unhealthy space, but to an unsafe space too, right? Because if you're isolated from all other connections, then it's much more easy for someone to control or abuse you, right? Because of the situation that you're in, the lack of external supports. Not that many relationships go in that way, but some do. And we have to be thinking about that ahead of time. Honesty and equality are also here. You need to not only be open and honest with one another, feeling, and communicate that to one another, right? But there has to be some equality in the relationship, right? There has to be, for a mutual healthy relationship to develop, both people take in charge of what is theirs within the space. Both people take in charge of what they contribute to the relationship's health and what they contribute to the relationship's unhealth, right? And then finally, whatever physical boundaries you have, mutual sexual choice making has to be part of any romantic relationship that you're going to be thinking about, right? It can't be one-sided because that's just a trip directly down into this negative, toxic space, right? And so this is, kind of a difficult topic to talk about. But unfortunately, it is true that like many relationships can end up in a more abusive space, right? And when you find yourself in an abusive space, the only thing you can really do is try and terminate that relationship, right? Don't be around that person anymore. Break up with them, or stop contact with them, if whatever it is, right? But that's going to be a really, really challenging thing to do, right? If you're having struggles with that, please reach out for help, right? University Catholic Center is available to you all. You're all students. We have to help you. If it's a romantic relationship, sexual violence kind of thing, Title IX office is also here, happy to help you. Campus safety, happy to help you if they need to get involved, right? But one of the big challenges here, right, is it's really hard to keep them with support, right? So those of you maybe who are trying to support somebody who's in a more abusive relationship, right? The best thing you can do is try your best to help them, get them to move on, get them to get out of that relationship however they can, but also to understand that it takes a lot to be able to get out of those kinds of relationships. Not just physically takes a lot, right? If somebody has economic control over you or like physical control over you, right? But also like the emotional and psychological pieces are really difficult. We have gaslighting on here, right? Sometimes you lose track of what is reality when you're stuck in one of these relationships, and it takes a really long time to get out. So being patient with friends who are struggling to get out of a abusive relationship is super important as well, right? So that's my spiel on toxic abusive relationships, and something that's super duper important, something to pay attention to, and something to seek professional help on, right? That's not something to play with. Hopefully we don't find ourselves in those abusive relationships as often, right? Much more of the time, we're going to find ourselves in a somewhat unhealthy relationship, right? Or maybe even it's a somewhat healthy relationship, but it's not as healthy as we want it to be, right? Because we would like all of our relationships to be really healthy, life-giving, and fulfilling, right? And in those cases, what we can do is, again, if you still want professional help, we're still happy to provide you professional help, right? But in those spaces, there's actually a lot more that you can do, hopefully. There's actually a lot more tools that can be made available to you. And so that's where assertive communication comes in. You could give me another slide, please. If you haven't heard of assertive communication before, this is one of those ones that we psychologists like to talk about all the time. So if you've already heard about this, sorry for repeating it. But the idea of when we communicate with somebody, the most oftentimes we either take a passive or an aggressive stance, right? We might find ourselves yelling and screaming at whoever it is that we've got a problem with, right? And pushing our ideas on them and pushing for what we want, right? Or we might find ourselves in a very passive place, putting ourselves down, putting our needs away, just focusing on what the other person wants, just focusing on what the other person needs, right? You can give me the next slide thing, I think, please. Yes, there we go. Here's the definitions. So, when we are being more passive, right, the idea is we're promoting harmony, we're promoting peace, right? This might happen with your romantic partner, but this might also happen with your friend, or this might also happen with a family member, right? When you don't speak up and don't stand up for your needs, then the problem resolves itself a lot more quickly, right? There's no more fight no more, right? Because you refuse to fight. Well, the problem with that is your needs didn't get met. Your needs were not respected in that space, right? And if your needs continue to go unmet, right, that's going to be very problematic for you, right? So you could go the other way. You could go very aggressive, standing up for your own rights. That's where you have that long, argument, that big fight with somebody, right? Because you're insisting that you're right and you're not backing down off of that, right? And you're insisting what you want, not what they want, what you think, not what they think, right? That's how aggressive communication forms. And of course, that's much more likely to get your needs fulfilled, right? So we're solving that problem that you have with passivity. But obviously, it's going to cause damage to the relationship because the other person's not getting their needs met, right? And the other person's probably angry or scared of you or sad or whatever. Right? And those things obviously hurt the relationship. This is how toxic relationships form, is problems with passive and aggressive communication, right? And sometimes those even combine together. Next slide, please. You maybe have heard the idea of passive aggressive before, right? If anybody's ever told you being passive aggressive, right? That's when you're kind of actually being mean to somebody, but like pretending that you're not, right? I think the passive aggressive stuff comes out all the time in like a roommate group chat, right? It's like, oh, haha, somebody left their dishes out. I don't know who that somebody would be, but they better go clean them up right now, right? And you totally know who you're talking to, and you totally should just say to their face, I'm not doing it, right? This is the idea of this passive aggressive communication, right? You're generally trying to be passive. You're generally trying to avoid conflict, right? But inside of you, you're so angry because you have these unmet needs, and these unmet needs keep promoting you to push and jab in ways that are, while not seemingly aggressive, are actually pretty aggressive and pretty mean, right? And those things which the other person that you're communicating with, you feel the same way back. And you're going to be passive aggressive, sniping at each other, until eventually it's going to blow up, right? And eventually you have that big fight with whoever it is, the person that you're being super passive aggressive with. That's the cycle that these things tend to blow on, right? Sometimes people just passive, and then starts to get passive aggressive, and then it starts to get boom, a big aggressive fight, right? And so we want to find a way to avoid this. We want to find a way not to fall into this trap that can happen over and over again, right? And that's where we come into assertive communication. Next slide. So assertive communication is about balancing what you want, your needs, your rights, your opinions, right? The same things that you would try and accomplish through aggressive communication, while not forgetting that other people also have rights and needs and opinions, and trying to fill those as well, right? It's sort of the middle section between what you want and what other people want. It's a middle road between being passive and being aggressive, right? That's what assertion is. It's that middle piece, right? When you're trying to be assertive, you want to share your thoughts, your feelings, your needs with other people, but not try and just make demands off of them, not try and just dismiss what they're feeling, but don't just dismiss what you need either, right? And that's the basis of this assertive communication. Okay, so let me pop back a slide actually. So I want us to get back in our groups real quick. I'd love to hear kind of your stories, right? Where have you experienced like these passive aggressive conflicts in the past, right? Who has that been a challenge with? Has it been really hard for you? Are you more able to deal with it, right? Like, I'd love to know like how that passive aggressive cycle is playing out. I'm not trying to be like old man yells at sky or whatever, right? But I think it's more and more easy to be more and more passive with better communication right? We're all really easily able to like text each other. We're all really easily able to get into some like weird social media drama or like we like block this person or unfollow that person. Like we're all have much more opportunity to communicate in ways that are not direct, ways that are not necessarily very assertive, ways where we can hide behind things, right? And so that's not like saying that that's all to blame, right? I think if like I grew up uh, with access to those kinds of things, right, I would also have had more of a problem with this, right? And so I think that as our technology pushes us forward, it gives us more and more opportunities to be unhealthy, right? It gives us more and more opportunities to slide down that relationship spectrum in ways that are not very helpful. And that's why sometimes I think you can see rising amounts of more unhealthy relationships going on uh, as time progresses, both because people have a better awareness of when things are not super healthy, but also because like we just have the opportunity to be more unhealthy more easily now, right? And so we can oftentimes accidentally slip into those things. So let's talk about being assertive. Can you skip me 2 slides, please? So I got the next handout that I have for you is the types of assertions handout. So if you could send that to the folks online, that would be great. There are all different types of assertions that you can make. This is just a sheet with some examples of them. But like the biggest one that I want to highlight is I language assertions, which is on here. It's like most of the way down the first page. Right? If you've ever heard of I statements before, like this is like couples therapy 101. Like this is going to be like very the first time I see a couple every time. That's probably going to be something we go over is I statement. I statements are really good because they focus on like the reasoning behind you, what you want. So you say something like, when you do X, Y, or Z, right? I feel blank. Therefore, I would like you to blank, right? So like you could say, whenever like you say you're gonna pick me up and then you're always late, right? That affects me because like I feel disrespected, I feel unvalued, I feel unimportant to you, right? And therefore, I would like you to stop being late all the dang time, right? And those are starts of I statements, right? And that's a way to kind of couch what you're asking for, change in the behavior of someone that you're looking for within the space of why, right? Rather than just making a demand, right? And then the key with I statements, of course, is after making said I statement, be willing to listen back to what the other person has to say to you, right? Certain communication is not about pushing your way only. You do have to listen to the other person as well, right? But this can be a good way to get into those conversations a little bit. But what I think more so than I need to teach you guys how to like assert yourself, right? Because you probably know how to assert yourselves. When push comes to shove, many of you have probably had those hard conversations with a boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend, roommate, brother, sister, cousin, whatever, right? You've had those hard conversations before. And so you know how to do them. The challenge is more so allowing ourselves to get there. There's an idea within DBT therapy called interpersonal effectiveness. That's the third handout that I have for you. If you could send me the interpersonal effectiveness handout. And these are some like cheerleading statements for interpersonal effectiveness here, right? These are things that we need to believe about ourselves. They're a little bit related to boundaries, honestly. But they're things that we need to internalize and challenge within ourselves in order to feel capable of doing those assertions, right? In order to feel capable of standing up for what we need and avoiding that passive aggressive. Right? And so some of these are like, it's okay to want or need something from someone else, right? I have a choice to ask someone for what I want or need. I can stand it if I don't get what I want or need. If someone says no to my request, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't have asked in the first place, right? The fact that other people aren't being assertive doesn't mean that I shouldn't be assertive. I want to please people I care about, but I don't have to please them all the time, right? So a lot of these are very different ones, right? But I want you individually now, you don't have to go ahead and put yourselves out there. Grab a pen or whatever writing you test you guys got us. And, underline a couple of these statements here, right? Or just if you don't got a pen, that's cool too. Not everybody got a pen on. But read these things through right now and figure out which ones you need to hear. Which ones do you need to remind yourself of in order to engage in more healthy conversation, in order to be more assertive, right? And myself from small things can be just as important as big things. I can insist on my rights and still be a good person. I have the right to assert myself even if I may inconvenience others. I can understand and validate another person while still asking for what I want. No law says other people's opinions are more valid than mine. I'm under no obligation to say yes to people simply because they ask me for something. The fact that I say no does not make me selfish, right? I'm sure you're reading through all of these. Some of them are going to hit, some of them aren't. Remember the ones that hit. I don't know, put this up somewhere. I don't know, staple it to your mirror. Don't staple things to your mirror. Staple it to your mirror. Copy one of them down on a post-it note, put it on your laptop case. Do something with it where you'll remember these things, because these are the pieces that are going to drive you towards assertive communication. And that assertive communication is going to drive you towards healthy relationships. And those healthy relationships are going to drive you towards self-fulfillment, self-actualization, right? But it all starts here with believing that you can do it, believing that it matters. All right, I'm starting to sound like a real inspirational speaker right now. This is not my normal vibe. I've got to get out of this. What if we are still not respected after we assert ourselves, right? And that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, right? There are differences between a healthy relationship, an unhealthy relationship, and an abusive relationship, right? And if we are pushing ourselves forward, asserting what we need, and not getting any respect back, not getting assertive communication back, then we know this isn't an unhealthy relationship. This is a toxic relationship. This is an abusive relationship, right? Now, I don't want us to use those words lightly. I don't want to jump there right away, right? Sometimes it's going to take a while. You need to assert yourself. Keep asserting yourself. Give it some time for the other person to come around. That may take them some time, right? But if it's not happening, right? And if you know you're not actually being aggressive, right? If you know I'm being assertive, I'm still keeping in mind what they want, but I'm also insisting on what I want, and I'm just getting no respect back, then unfortunately we're talking about what's more of a toxic relationship or even an abusive relationship, right? And in those spaces, those relationships typically can't be fixed, right? Sometimes they can, every once in a while, right? But typically what you need to do in those spaces is move on from that relationship, right? And that can be extremely challenging, right? Maybe it's a best friend, right? Or maybe it's a partner, right? Or maybe it's a family member, right? Maybe it's somebody that you are economically tied to. That's like family that you're not financially independent from, or a spouse, or a cohabiting partner, or roommate, right? Those things can be very, very difficult to get out of, but you have to start trying to find a way to move out of that space. If you know that I am being assertive, I am doing it right, I'm still not getting any respect back, I've given them chances, then that's the only way that you can really push. That's kind of a challenging one to hear, but something that we should hear, right? And that's even a little bit of that interpersonal effectiveness there, right? What do you need to know, what you need to feel in order to feel empowered to leave those kinds of challenging relationships, those kinds of toxic relationships? What do you need to be able to put in firm boundaries with those people? But yeah, thank you for the question. Good question, difficult question. Next slide. So I want to go to conflict mediation and resolution. We're about 2/3 of the way done here. We're on the home stretch. I'm actually flying through this today. I apologize for that. I have plenty of time for questions. We'll also probably get out of here just a little bit early. But I want to bring up a couple more Bible verses for you. Again, Many of us are Christians in here. If you're not Christian, that's okay too. I'm not trying to hate, right? But I think that it's important for us to see in Matthew, some of you may be familiar with this passage, the idea of if another church member sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. And if they listen to you, you have regained a friend, right? If they do not listen, take one or two others along. If not, take two or three witnesses, right? Bring the whole church, right? All of this, you see that there's kind of a progression of taking it chill at first and making it more and more and more until here it is. Let such a one be as a Gentile and a tax collector. I don't know if the Bible talks in weird old timey ways, right? But basically cut off all connection with that person, right? This goes back a little bit to what we were talking about with the question, right? When if you're trying to practice assertions, if you're trying to practice good communication and you're just getting nothing back, you let it go, you try, you go successfully more and more. And then if it's really not working out, you got to cut ties, right? But I want to balance it also with earlier in Matthew from Matthew 7 here, right? For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, right? I like this line in particular. That's why I've highlighted it. You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye, right? When we are in conflict situations, when we are trying to assert ourselves, when we're trying to confront people, right? In those spaces, if we get self-righteous, if we feel justified, and we don't need to take a step back and look at the fact that maybe we the one acting out, maybe we the one being crazy, right? That is going to inevitably lead to problems. And so whenever we're having assertive communication, and especially whenever that communication is going to lead us into a more conflictual space, right? That's what I'm covering here. It's like basically, how do you keep going? How do you keep pushing forward into real conflicts, right? You need to make sure that you are on the right level too, right? You need to make sure that you're not demanding something that is unreasonable because of some other outside factor, right? So next slide, please. These, I think, map nicely onto ideas about psychological ideas as well, right? The idea of starting with going straight to the person and then bringing one or two others and bringing one or two others. That's similar to the concept of minimally invasive procedures, right? Probably those of you maybe have got surgery before, maybe you haven't, but you know someone who's got surgery before, right? The trend obviously is to make the least amount of incisions on the body as possible while still helping them to cure whatever surgery is needed, right? Because you're going to increase the healing time massively, right? You know, athletes got, you know, more often than not now, like things are like scopes or whatever, rather than like, you know, actually opening up like a, if you can do something with a minimally invasive procedure, that's going to help healing. It avoids unnecessary pain, unnecessary complication, right? And this can be applied to the idea of conflict management. This can be applied to the idea of like passive aggressive communication and how we can be more assertive, right? We want to be chill. We want to go in, confront somebody face to face without blaming, without accusing, without letting our anger build up, because we're not addressing it at first, such that when we do try and address it, it can't help but become a big conflict, right? We want to, as soon as we see something going on, say something, manage it at that time, try and manage it respectfully and directly with the person, right? Next slide, please. And so how do we do that, right? We're in a conflict with somebody. We go in directly to them. They're actually able to engage with us. They want to engage with us. You can't have a conflict. You can't have a conflict resolution with somebody that doesn't want conflict resolution with you, right? You know, that's just impossible, right? But say we do go to this person, they are willing, they are interested in engaging with us, but how do we actually reach a compromise? How do we actually find a situation that meets their needs and meets our needs, right? Because that's the whole point of assertive communication, right? If you just like go assertive communication, use all your I statements and whatever, and then somebody ends up backing down and not meeting their needs and just meeting yours, well, then you've just done a nicer face of aggressive communication, right? You just basically still had an unhealthy conversation if somebody is sacrificing everything that they want or need for everything that you want or need, right? And so that's not a real conflict mediation. That's not a real conflict resolution. It's just a furtherance of the unhealthiness of the relationship. It's just kicking the can down the line, right? And it's going to blow up into another fight later. So what can you do? How can you find compromises that actually respect both people's needs, right? This is where we have the idea of positions versus interests, right? A position is what somebody says they want in a fight, right? I need you to do this, right? I need you to never have people over to the apartment because I need to study and you're always so loud all the time. We need to ban all guests from our apartment. I can't have you have nobody over ever, right? And then somebody else says, that's unfair. That's not cool. I need to be able to have my friends over. I can't just live this life like this where I never connect with anybody. I need to have a social life. You need to stop being so focused on academics all the time, right? This is ridiculous, and you're just stopping people from having fun. We need to have parties over here whenever I want to have parties, right? Obviously, these two positions don't meet with each other, right? But it clearly made this hypothetical situation to show there's a meet in the middle here, right? The idea is the interests of both people. The interest of the first person that wants somebody to come over, their interest is to have maybe a calm place to be, safe, feeling, secure place, right, where they feel that they can get work done and do there, right? The interest of the other person is, I want to have, a social life. I want to feel with you. I want to have a state where I can feel able to enjoy myself with the people that I enjoy being with, right? Those two things are mutually exclusive. Whether or not we have people over, yes, people over, no people over, those two things are mutually exclusive positions, right? But you can reach a compromise based on interests, right? It said, okay, like time, right? Okay, people come over, but they won't stay late, right? Or people come over, but not like the night before your test or something like that. Or okay, like on weekdays, maybe they're doing nothing, but like on weekends, like come on, like these are ways that you can find ways to meet people's interests, even if their positions don't line up with one another, right? And so whenever you go into a conflict, as best you can, don't think about what somebody is asking for, their position, but think about why they are asking for that, what their actual interest is in the situation. Because if you can identify their and you can identify your why, then hopefully you can make a resolution that is going to be good for everybody in that. Does that sound good? Okay, I think I got like one more slide, and then I'm going to outro with a plug for Counseling Center. But this is the different things that you can do to hopefully have your best conflict management, your best bet to achieve a good resolution. I've got one more sheet for you, the checklist for a good resolution. Celine will send it to the folks online. But this is just some basic stuff. First, set a time to talk, right? Don't go waiting for somebody to do something again. Right? Oh, I'm so annoyed whenever they do that. But they're not doing it right now, so it feels weird to bring it up. So I'm just going to wait until the next time they do it, and then I'm going to pounce on them, right? That you might think is a good idea, right? Because you think you're not bringing up old stuff. You think like, okay, this is going to be a better way to do it. It's typically not a good way to do conflict resolution. It's not a good way to do conflict resolution because both people need to be ready to engage in that conflict. But if somebody's like really had a terrible day, right? And they can't like put forward a good faith effort to do a conflict resolution with you in that moment, right? Or maybe somebody's like literally on their way to work, right? They can't have a 90-minute conversation with you about whatever it is that you're fighting about because they're going to be late and their boss is going to be pissed at them, right? Like those things matter. Now, of course, that's not an excuse for somebody to infinitely push off a conflict, right? But say to somebody, hey, I got something we want to talk to you about, like, can we set a time? And then set a time within that day or within the next couple of days, right? So that every person comes prepared to talk. Be aggressive and not assertive. We covered. Be assertive and not aggressive. Oh my gosh, don't do it the exact opposite way I've been saying all this hour. Be assertive, not aggressive. Work to identify interests and not positions, right? And then here's where the checklist thing comes in. Make sure whatever agreement you reach is realistic and specific, right? What is each person actually going to do? And can they actually do that? Right? Because sometimes if you want to, like, if you feel really bad because you did something and you want your friend to feel better and say, I'll never do that ever again. I'll never do that ever again. Right? But you can't actually say that you'll never like forget to do your dishes ever again. You can't actually say that you'll never like come home loud and late and wake them up again, right? Like you can't make those claims. That's not something you can realistically make, right? And so make sure whatever claim you make, whatever agreement is reached, is reasonable for both parties. If you need help, reach out to a third party for support. Happy to do conflict mediation sessions with the counseling center if you want us to do so. Also, if you live on campus, RAs literally have a procedure for helping you do conflict mediations if you want to involve them. Again, this will be if you can't get it done on your own, always approach each other first and then bring in other people to help if that individual approach doesn't work. And then finally, set a time to follow up. Like whenever you have this conflict, whenever you make an agreement, set a time, a week, 2 weeks, a month, but make it specific and put it in the calendar. We got to follow up about this and make sure it's still working for both sides, right? Because if it's not working for both sides, and one person's not saying that it's not working for them, right? You're just leading towards your next big conflict, right? And so making a healthy follow-up plan is going to avoid that next big conflict by addressing it earlier, by addressing it when it's less big, and so that you can make whatever changes you need to make to the conflict resolution strategy before things get bad. Does that sound good? Okay, I love it. Next slide, please. So whenever you are struggling with this relationship stuff, whether it's intimate relationships, whether it's family relationships, whether it's friend relationships, come back to the counseling center about it. We would be more than happy to talk to you. We're located here on campus. We provide 100% free HIPAA confidential counseling to all enrolled students for the entirety of your time enrolled here. And specifically, since we're talking about relationships today, we're happy to provide relationship counseling for any couple, even if only one person in that relationship is an APU student, right? The other members of the relationship could be outside of the APU. It's all good. As long as you're an APU student, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, can come with you and do relationship counseling if you want to. We also have a 24/7 urgent care. You can call us at 626-815-2109. You can go on your My Cougar Health app and make an appointment if you don't want to talk to people. You can just push the buttons on there. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can. Counseling, the interns here put out all kinds of great stuff all the time, not necessarily just on relationship health, but on all kinds of topics. If you want more positive health stuff. Next slide, please. So I'm going to end here with a call to action. I talked to you for an hour and 10 minutes today. Hopefully you learned something today. Think about what you learned today. Think about what was surprising to you. Think about what you could use to help in your relationships. Maybe it's a relationship that's kind of unhealthy that you need to work on. Maybe it's a toxic relationship you need to think about getting yourself out of. Maybe it's a healthy relationship that you want to help grow to the next level, right? Maybe you need to use some assertive communication. Maybe you need to cut down on your passive aggressive communication style. Whatever it is that you need to do. Think about it right now. Jot it down if you want. Practice it this week, right? Because if you don't practice the stuff that I said, it ain't going to be no good. Next slide, please. We'll stick around and take questions. Jocelyn and I will be here, so on the chat or call them out. If you want to skip ahead, we got one more of these left. So if any of you still need more soda credits, or if any of you are looking for your 4th workshop so that you can get that certificate of completion, come on out next Friday. I know it's right before Thanksgiving break. I know this one's always the least people attended, but I think it's a good one. It's goal setting, time management. Get that stuff sorted as you head into finals so that you can feel good about it. Again, the Zoom is available for anybody that is traveling. You can still join us via Zoom.